Hey guys, great podcast this week. This week our special guest is Timmy Price. You guys know him from earlier episodes. You also know him as producer of the show, but we do have a big announcement this week. Timmy is coming on as not only producer, but also kind of a co-host role. So he will be on every show from now on. Next week we have Pat Riley coming on as a special guest, and Timmy will be on that episode as well, kind of as producer slash co-host role simultaneously. So super excited about that. This week's episode, Timmy actually interviews me, so you'll get some new updates from me, I guess, if you care about that. But more importantly, we talk about common grace this week and how that plays a role in our lives as Christians and how we can learn from influences outside of the Christian world. A really good conversation about that. So really great episode, guys. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. I'm a simple man.
I'm a simple man. I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya.
So Timmy, I appreciate you taking over the podcast today. I just got back in from a long business trip and was completely jet lagged and out of it. So I tried to sleep most of the day and spend a little bit of time with the kids and all that kind of thing. So I'm out of it, but I'm gonna let you run the show today, man.
Well, I'm happy and excited. It's been a busy day for me. I did the opposite of you. I went on like a 4-mile hike this morning through some trails and then helped a friend do some computer shopping, had a couple Zoom calls. So it's been a full day, but yeah, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about, I know you just recently got a new job, and though you texted me the other day, said, yeah, I'm in California right now. I'm like, what? So tell me a little bit about what the new job is, and I'm sure everybody's interested to know what's going on, because I know you've had a lot of life changes. So this new job, you've only had 2 weeks, and they already had you on a business trip.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even been there a full week before they took me out to California and abused me for a week. So it's cool. Yeah, so I just started working for a company called Right Hook Digital. And Right Hook Digital is an e-commerce marketing company in Brisbane, Australia. And that's where they're headquartered, Brisbane. And they also have a office in Adelaide that is on the West Coast, the Gold Coast area, I think. And they started the company 3 years ago. They already have 86 employees around the world. They started the US team about a year and a half ago, maybe. And I am hire number 13 on the US team. So it's really cool. There's kind of a background and, there's a big story behind why I left my agency and decided to go back into the agency world and, working full-time for another agency and not just running my own. And it's funny, like, 2 weeks ago, I would have told you different reasons why I joined as opposed to what I would tell you today after going to that week-long summit in California with Right Hook. So it was an eye-opening week, and I don't know. I have a mind full of information and inspiration, and I'm just trying to soak it all in before I really start hitting the ground running with them on Monday. So
Sure.
Yeah.
So what's Right Hook do? Like, what is their primary focus of the company?
Yeah, great question. So they only work with e-commerce companies. And their tagline on their website is we build hyper growth marketing strategies for e-commerce companies. And the way that they have done that, the way that they started 3 years ago, was just doing Facebook and Instagram marketing. And they've taken companies that are small companies, like only 40,000 a month in revenue, up to over $1 million, $1.5 million a month in revenue in like 12 months time. So they have tons and tons of stories like that. They're really, really good. Like for instance, a jewelry company in Brooklyn, they make those little nameplate jewelry brackets, like that you get on Mother's Day. It's like a necklace with the names of your kids on them.
Oh, sure. Like a Pandora's bracelet or something like that.
Yeah. Like a Pandora bracelet. But they're mostly necklaces and stuff. And that company, so that's the company I was talking about. This time last year, that company was doing 40,000 a month, and by Christmas, they had them doing over $1 million a month in
Wow.
sales. I mean, just rapid growth. And in fact, that client has paused some of their marketing because they need
I
to.
would think so.
Yeah, because they grew so fast, they're having to build new manufacturing relationships. They had their own manufacturing building that they've had for years. The guy that runs the business now was his dad's manufacturing company, and he kind of took it online with this jewelry thing. And they've grown so fast, like, hey, let's just pause everything, and you guys just give us strategy direction. And when we get new partners, then we can ramp up the marketing again. So they haven't. I mean, I'm sorry, they haven't paused. They've just reduced budget.
Sure. It's like the kid that has a growth spurt and can't go to school because he doesn't have any clothes that fit him.
Right. So I mean, this company, I've just been so impressed by it. Like, I can't even believe I got in the door. It doesn't feel like, this is a moment of transparency. I apologize, but I have imposter syndrome a little bit. Like, they're like, yeah, we really want you on the team and you're going to be great. And I'm like, you guys are so like good at this. Like, I just feel like I don't fit, but they made me feel welcomed and stuff and encouraged me. So I'm ready to go, man.
Now you sent me a picture from the weekend. It looked like you were at quite the picturesque spot.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about that.
So first of all, they just did the U.S. team as far as flying them somewhere. The year before, in February last year, they flew everybody around the world, whether they were in the Philippines or the U.S. or South America. They flew everybody that was a strategist to Australia for a week and did the same thing. And that was right before COVID hit, like in February. And this year, they're like, all right, COVID's crazy. We've been doing, kind of getaways with the Australian team already. Let's just do one for the American team. And then everybody else joined us. It was still a worldwide summit. Everybody else joined by Zoom. And then the American team was the only one that was together. So they flew us, we're all remote. So we're all over the US. They flew us all, bought our tickets, flew us all to California, got two Airbnbs on the beach. And our Airbnb was this like just gorgeous condo right on the Pacific Ocean in Newport Beach, just south of LA. The pictures are incredible. I'll have to send some to the Slack channel, but you'd get up, I would wake up in the morning and walk out into the living room and be looking at the Pacific Ocean. It was gorgeous.
You're like what, 50 feet from the water?
Yeah, a little farther. I mean, it looks like that in the pictures. It's probably 100 feet, but yeah, okay. There's nothing between us and the water but sand. Yeah. So their culture is so amazing. They just really pour into their employees, believe that building the person is how you build the company. So they really invest in their people. So I had some misconceptions about it. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of we do some team building games on the beach, and then we do like a 3-hour conference, on Zoom with the international team. And it wasn't like that at all. Like, we woke up at 8 a.m. and we had to do prep work for each session. The sessions didn't start until 3:00 in the afternoon Pacific time, because that's 8 a.m. Australian time, where they're located in Australia. So we would do prep work from like 8 a.m. until 10. And then we would do what they call jam sessions, where we would pick a client and just all minds, whether you worked on that team or not, all minds were geared towards that client or that problem. And we would just talk about strategy and how to improve that client and all that kind of stuff. And then we would eat lunch and then do like our actual daily work. For me, it was onboarding stuff. The onboarding stuff's really extensive. And then everybody else was working on their clients. And then at 3:00, we hit the summit time. And from 3 p.m. until 9:30 p.m., our faces were on our computers, just in this meeting, just really intense, a lot of information, a lot of breakout sessions, a lot of work. And then after that, we would sit around and talk marketing, just nerd out on marketing, because we're all marketing nerds, till like midnight. So it was not a go to the beach and hang out on the beach and play spike ball kind of trip. It was intense. Yeah. And I loved every second of it. It was so worth it. So
I don't know enough about the industry to really ask intelligent questions. But like you've mentioned clients a few different times. I don't know if it's proprietary or not, but are you able to share, or would we know any clients that you work with necessarily, not necessarily specifically, but your company?
You would. We work with a lot of fashion brands, so probably any female listeners would know them better. But KMM is a handbag company that is really big. Swank and Posh is like a women's leggings company, like those real fancy leggings and that girls wear to jog or just wear around in the store or whatever, but also like the ones that look like jeans and stuff, but they fit like leggings. They're out of Detroit. They're pretty big. I don't know enough about all the clients that we have, but there are some very big brands out there that people would recognize. I just don't know them all yet.
Sure. Well, that's really cool. Now, the other thing I noticed from that picture was not just the location, but the age demographic. You told me you're one of the oldest guys in the U.S. team. Is that correct?
On the U.S. team, I'm the second oldest guy at 37.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, it's a complete Silicon Valley feeling, man. Like one of the guys that's one of the junior strategists is 20 years old. He may not be a strategist yet. He's like an advertising specialist for Facebook. He's 20 years old and he blows my mind, man. He is so mature. And like I was on a client call with him, just listening in week before last, and I was like, this dude's 20, and he's making Silicon Valley money as a 20-year-old because he's so good at what he does. And they have a lot of people like that. One of the social media guy that was with us there that does social media actually for Right Hook instead of the clients. He does Right Hook social media, 22, and lives in Guatemala, and they flew him to the US too because he's kind of on that US time zone, US team. So it's like that, man. My boss is 34. He's 3 years younger than me. So the content, what our main content writer on the US team is the only person that's older than me.
So when they hired you, they were like, we can get some wisdom from this guy to get some.
For sure. That's what they kept telling me. They're like, man, you have so much experience and we love to have you on the team. And I'm like, you guys are smarter than me. Like, I don't, what am I doing here? So
you started college when all of them were graduating kindergarten. So
if that, Bradley's was born in 2000, dude. 2000. So these guys are legit, man. Most everybody's late 20s, early 30s. About between like 27 and 34 is most everybody. And then you have some really young ones, and then you have the old geezers like me. So
well, very, very fun stuff. What I know you have a lot. You said that you have to unpack still mentally and try to hit the ground running Monday, but what are a few, you've already shared a bunch, but what are a couple like specific takeaways or things that you think people in the podcast would like to know, or things that you've like taken away and say like, this is going to change either my personal life or just professional life?
Yeah. That's a loaded question. So I will try to share without sharing too much.
Yeah.
So two things. We did the first 2 days on personality and personal strengths and talents, just personal development and how that relates to professional development. So I got some stuff there. And then on day 3 and 4, it was all business related, process focused, mission focused objectives. And I got some stuff I could use there on the professional and personal side too. And then day 5 was a recap of that. So takeaways. We did a strengths test called Clifton Strengths. By far one of the best personality tests I've ever taken. Personality or strengths test. I feel like I've taken them all, but I'd never heard of this one. I've done DISC assessment, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Tradeify, like all these different things. I actually had a startup for a while that was a hiring startup that we focused just on personality tests. So I felt like I knew it really well. But the Clifton Strengths test and another test that we did called PSIU gave me new reasons why I feel like I started my agency in the first place and why I left my agency this time that I did not know before I got there. So that was really eye-opening for me. Um, but basically what I learned is that um, I'm what's called a high stabilizer, which means I like going into a situation and seeing what can be improved upon or what problems need to be fixed and stabilizing that situation. There's more to it, but that's it in, kind of in short. And on the Clifton Strengths side, I'm high in relationships and connectedness, which means I kind of connect the dots, and high on purpose, which means I believe everything's connected for a reason and all that kind of stuff. So all of those things um, showed me that what I was looking for was not to run my own business, although I did want to do that. And I've done that several other times because I do have an entrepreneurial spirit, but it showed me that I don't want to necessarily run my own business. I want to work in an entrepreneurial company for somebody else where I have the freedom to be entrepreneurial within that company.
Sure.
And so what I realized, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, why did I start my own business? I would have said because I had the entrepreneurial bug and I, just wanted to go do things on my own, which was true. But what I learned was, I think I left and started my business because I was tired of really bad cultures. Every company I'd worked into up until that point, like, had been stifling, kind of that old stodgy style of, your glass ceiling's right here above your head. You're not going to go any higher, and do what we tell you to do. And if you mess up, you're in trouble. And Right Hook's totally different. They're like, hey, we're here to let you run free and help make our company better. And so I realized that that's, I'm better suited for working in a company like that than running one on my own, because I'm a high stabilizer. I'm not necessarily a high innovator. I'm not somebody that invents things or is always thinking of the next idea. I like to hear somebody else's idea and then tell them how it's going to work or not going to work and what they can do to make it work. And that's where I shine. And so I think that's why I left and started my business. And I think that's why I stopped my business and went back into working for another agency. I just didn't know that until after I started working for this agency. So
That's huge. I mean, even if it doesn't work out with this company or you're there a short amount of time, just having that piece of knowledge sounds super valuable for you to be able to navigate future steps in your life.
Oh, for sure. Like, if anybody listening to the podcast, if you're kind of wondering, hey, what should I do with my next steps, or why am I not happy in my job? I would highly recommend doing Clifton Strengths. It's $35 to take the test, maybe 45. So there is an investment on your part, but it's extremely thorough. There's over 100 questions. And when you get it back, it's like looking in a mirror. And especially if you're honest with yourself and kind of read through the material, you're like, this is how I operate. This is how I do things. Even in your personal life, this is how I relate with my wife. This is how I relate with my friends at work or my friends at church. And you can attach onto those things and say, hey, these are really are my strengths. How can I use them now to maximize the life that God is asking me to live? It's not a Christian test at all. It's done by Gallup. The Gallup polls was the one. They took like their 50 years of research and made this test a few years ago. And they're always iterating on it and making it better. But it's kind of a common grace thing. Like for me, I was one morning I was sitting on the beach because that was the only time you could go to the beach was like at 6 a.m. So that's not completely true. You could go later, but there's just so much to do. But I was sitting on the beach and I was wondering, like, God, why am I getting so much value out of this Clifton Strengths thing? I feel like I'm getting more value out of it this week than I am reading your word in the morning. Like, I just felt like I was getting more answers. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, Pat Riley, who we're going to have on the podcast next week, or next episode in 2 weeks. And I was sharing that with him. And he goes, dude, I took that test too. And he said, it was the same thing for me. He said, it's common grace. Common grace is a real thing. And inspiration that God gives you doesn't just have to come from the Bible. It needs to be corrected by the Bible. I mean, you're not trying to get off into some kind of woo-woo thing. You need to have the Bible as your authority, but common grace that's out there in the world because God created the world is valuable for us as Christians too.
Right.
You think about how Paul wrote his letters to the Corinthians or to the Ephesians. He's quoting modern poets and modern criers, and that those their sayings got put into the Bible. And it goes back to what my psychology professor at Bob Jones told us our freshman year. He said, all truth is God's truth. Because God is true, if something else is actually true, truly true, then that's God's truth. There's all kinds of principles and things we see in the world that are helpful to us. And I think sometimes as Christians, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's fundamentalism, maybe it's me. I feel like sometimes I'm like, hey, if the Bible didn't say it, it's not something I should read. I haven't thought that way for a long time. This is not a new revelation, but I was fortunate I learned that at a very young age. But I see Christians, and still today, that if it's not a Christian movie, they won't go see it. If it's not a Christian song, they won't listen to it. If it's not a whatever. But God's principles are in the world, and he created the world, and at one time the world was good, and there are things that we can learn outside of our Christian influences that are very good for us as Christians. Yeah.
And I mean, I think like you never want to go in one side of the ditch or the other. You always want to stay on the road. And I think the other side of that is when you're rejecting, like not reading your Bible at all, because there's so much other truth out there and you're always looking to that other side. So I think that's to, the point you were just making, the detriment of those that would say like, oh, I only watch Christian things or only do that, support Christian businesses, is, maybe they're trying to stay away from the one side of the road, that ditch, and they go all the way completely over to the other side of the ditch. And I think it's important to, because not only Christians are intelligent, there's a lot of truth and a lot of, knowledge that's been gained over the years by secular people. And I know even from going through counseling, growing up, nouthetic biblical counseling, that was the only type of counseling that Christians should go to. But then when I'm, going through a divorce and addicted to pornography and, dealing with stuff that happened to me as a kid with abuse and stuff, I went to Christian therapy, which, you heard the buzzword therapy, especially, our background going to Bob Jones, like, no, don't do that. And psychology, that's a curse word. And, here's a Christian counselor going through using psychology and therapy and having me lay down on the floor and draw an outline, or have me get comfortable and playing relaxing music, having me go to my happy place. Like, but having gone through that, like, wow, there was so much that I learned about myself, and so much I learned about how I think and how I'm wired, and both positive and negative, that wouldn't have come solely from nouthetic or biblical counseling. And so, yeah, you have to be wise with all of that, but there's so much wisdom out there that if used in the right way can benefit your life.
100% true, dude. And I that was something which you were just talking about there with nouthetic counseling. For those who don't know, nouthetic counseling is a type of counseling that says all the answers you need for all your problems in life, mental illness or whatever, are found in scripture, and you should never take lithium or antidepressants or anti-anxieties or anything like that. And they're basing that on,
but don't use psychology or anything else.
Yeah, no psychology. It's just biblical counseling. And what they're saying, and where they get that from, nouthetic, is from the Greek word noutheo, which is the idea of admonishing one another. That talks about that in the New Testament a lot. As Christians, we should encourage each other, teach each other, counsel each other, which is true. But because all truth is God's truth, science is God's truth, true science is God's truth. And when we find that, hey, mental illness is an actual thing, and there are chemicals in your mind that can get messed up, and there are imbalances, and there are hormonal imbalances, and all that kind of stuff, and medicine and psychology can help that, then we should take that part of God's truth as well and combine it with are the truth of Scripture. And being a counseling minor at Bob Jones University, I didn't learn that till I was in my late 20s, because I was totally bought in and totally educated on nouthetic counseling, and I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, and I think kind of the misnomer that maybe pastors carry around with them, and I don't want to make these wide sweeping generalities, but what I've experienced some of the same, where pastor, the word is shepherd, and so he's supposed to shepherd the flock. But think about a shepherd with sheep. He may know a lot about animals, but there's going to be certain things that happen to his sheep or his livestock that he is not capable of doing. He may be able to deliver the babies that come out, or he might be able to treat certain illnesses or breaks or falls, but he's going to have to get a veterinarian involved at some point. He may have to get other type of, maybe something falls over the edge. Well, he's not going to build a ladder or rope structure. He might need to go get somebody that knows more than him to partner with. And that's not to say the shepherd's not qualified or that he isn't, a good shepherd. He's actually a better shepherd when he admits, hey, I need to advise like this person, or, in the animal context, this animal needs somebody other than myself. So yeah, I totally agree with you there, and think, the important thing is that we don't go into a situation thinking we know everything or try to push that off. But on the flip side, I would say there's, when you do have God's word, like you are equipped with a lot. And so unfortunately, I think the other side that we talked about, the ditch side, there's a lot of Christians today that I can't counsel you because I'm not a professional, and I can't do anything, and so they just bow out entirely. And it's like, churches shouldn't all have to have professional counselors hired on staff necessarily. Like, we as believers should be counseling each other and encouraging to our ability. Obviously, I've never done certain types of things in my life, like drugs, for example. Somebody's dealing with drug addiction, I don't really know that much about. There's other things I've been addicted to that I can speak to, but in that case, I can give biblical principles, but then direct them to either somebody who's gone through that before or get the professionals involved. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily always have a counselor do counseling. Like, I think, again, that's going down a different road, but I think a lot of people maybe hang their hat on that.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. A shepherd is not a veterinarian, and it takes wisdom. Like what you're talking about there is, there are times where they should counsel you, and some people are saying, hey, I'm not a professional, I can't say anything here. Like, maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. It takes wisdom, and sometimes probably making mistakes, and probably not sure if you're saying the right thing or not, but it's something you have to learn. You have to learn, okay, I can give advice here, but when it gets to here, I can't. And you don't always know where that line is,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's an important conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear more about the Clifton Strengths. I haven't taken it myself, but next episode, I'm interested to hear more, because I think we just scratched a little bit there, and I think hopefully that stirs up some interest for the next episode.
For sure. Maybe that's they should be in our recommendations. For
yeah,
sure.
Well, I think that's a good transition into the recommendations.
Yeah.
Is that yours for this week, the Clifton Strengths?
I think I'm gonna have two. So
yeah, go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you by recommendations. My first recommendation is Clifton Strengths. Clifton Strengths is actually, let me look it up here on the internet. So I'm looking up Clifton Strengths real quick, but it is a personality test that focuses on your talents, and basically what you get is a list of 34 talents, and just because something is at the bottom, like 30 to 34, doesn't mean it's a weakness. It means it's a talent that you have, but it's not your strongest talent. And your top five, specifically your top five, are your strongest talents, and you can use those talents to help strengthen the ones underneath 6 through 34. And I think they've changed that a little bit recently. Now they're saying top 5 is really important, but also top 10 are right there too, because there's a margin for error, right? Like, let's say the test's not perfect and your number 7 is actually number 4. They're wanting to say, hey, that top 10, you can count on that really being true, but your top 5 are probably what you're best at. Sure. And I'll give an example of that. I'll pull up my Clifton Strengths results actually.
Don't take away too much from the next episode.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you guys what mine are real quick, just to help sell this thing, because I'm super into it. And it's, like I said, having done a bunch of these over the years, this is by far the best one I've ever seen. I've just been really impressed with it. All right, so I'm just going to show you guys my Clifton Strengths real quick. This is what your results look like. Your Clifton Strengths 34 results. And you get a list like this. 1 through 5 is bolded, and then 34. So my top 5 are context, connectedness, restorative, learner, relator. And I'll just breeze through real quick and show you what that means. This is a document full of awesome stuff, but context. You enjoy thinking about the past and you understand the present by researching its history. And then, I see that in my own life. I always think about how things went in the past and how I can make it better in the future. So it was dead on for me. And then it gives you a description about that. Connectedness. You have a faith in links among all things. You believe there are few coincidences and that almost everything has a meaning. As a Christian, obviously, I think God works all things together for good. And that's a huge part of my life, especially right now in my life, huge part of my life. And this test nailed it, brought it right out at the top.
Believe it's sovereignty there, I see.
Sovereignty, bro.
Yeah.
John Calvin's my homeboy. All right. Restorative. You are adept at dealing with problems. You are good at figuring out what's wrong and resolving it. That's that stabilizer concept I was telling you about from the PSIU test. So 2 separate tests, 2 separate companies, they both aligned so well. It blows my mind. I've never seen anything like it. Learner, you have a great desire to learn and want to learn continuously to improve. The process of learning rather than the outcome excites you. 100% true for me. Couldn't have been more accurate. Relator, you enjoy close relationships with others. You find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. I think that's why I have this podcast. It's just, it nails it over and over and over again. And a huge fan. So that's I said I was going to do 2 recommendations. That's just one because it took so long. You'll get the other recommendation next time.
Sounds good. That's fair. My recommendation is actually a movie. I saw this a few months back on an airplane. So always watching movies on airplanes is always kind of weird because you're watching on a smaller screen. You have a lot of distraction noise, but this movie was actually really good. Would love to watch it again sometime, but it's called The Way Back. Ben Affleck.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
2020, so it's only a year old. I'll read you the little IMDb description. It's Jack Cunningham, who Ben Affleck plays, was a high school basketball phenom who walked away from the game, forfeiting his future. Years later, when he reluctantly accepts a coaching job at his alma mater, he may get one last shot at redemption. And the reason I love this movie was it was done very realistic, at least in my opinion. Like you see his life, and it just starts off with him he's a heavy alcoholic. Like he's drinking, and it just shows him going to the fridge over and over, like clearing out like 30 cans in one night. And he goes to work the next morning and he's pouring hard alcohol into his, Yeti mug or, kind of like one of these that has, but it's metal. And so you just think, oh, he's drinking coffee, but no, it's like hard alcohol, and he refills it later in the day and has like a cooler in his truck. So as soon as he gets off the job site doing construction, welding, or whatever he does, he pulls that open and cracks open a cold one as he's driving away from the work site. So he's just always pounding alcohol. And you're like, how could somebody get to this way? And then it kind of slowly throughout the movie reveals why he got to this place. Because you find out he, like the description said, he was a star basketball player that had scholarship options and full rides and things like that. And yet here he is, and you find out he's divorced, and his wife is now seeing someone else, and just all this stuff, and like, why and how. And as the movie goes on, like I said, you learn more and more. And I really appreciated the fact that, like, I think language can be used in a way where, personally, I don't use, foul language. That's a conviction of mine. But in movies, I don't necessarily.
You and I are different there.
Yeah.
You and I are different.
I'm just saying, like, that's not something I do. So, like, when I hear somebody else, like, I'm familiar with it. Like, people in my workplace do it all the time. It's not that, like, I'm like,
Right.
wow, I can't believe somebody said that. But I think there's a way to do it that's more realistic, where, some movies just throw it in there to try and get the rating up higher, to get the shock and awe. This was done where he's working at a Catholic school, and so he's cursing, and you just feel uncomfortable. So, like, first, like, shouldn't be cursing, but then also because he's at a Catholic school,
right,
it just heightens it. So even someone who's used to cursing, like as an audience member, is going to see that, but just feel like on edge, like, oh, you're going to get in trouble, or oh, don't do that because there's a priest right around the corner or whatever. And it just shows him, like, it wasn't like he gets a second chance and everything changes. In fact, at the end of the movie ends not with him getting his life together. It actually ends with him checking into rehab, and then like 20 minutes goes by, and at the end of the movie, he's still in rehab, still figuring things out, still healing. And I love that ending, because it wasn't that everything got better. It wasn't that he just had to do this one thing and then everything starts falling into place. There's so many questions that are left unanswered. And again, hope I haven't spoiled the movie for anybody, but it was really well done. And I feel like anyone that's going through any type of difficult thing or has gone through that can really relate with that. And it just feel like it was a really well done real life story. I don't know if it has any truth to a real life character or not, but yeah, the way back Ben Affleck 2020 movie just from last year. So
legit. Common grace, bro.
Yeah.
Common grace.
Yeah.
Like a movie like that, it's not even intended to be Christian, speaks to you as a Christian.
Yeah, for sure.
So good. We all know this. I'm not saying this is like a revelation or this is a novel idea. We all know this, but I think that sometimes as Christians, we can, like you were saying, you want to stay on the road. You don't want to go off to one side or the other. Sometimes as Christians, at least I have, coming from a fundamentalist background, have tended to fall into the side of, that's not Christian. So what can I really get from that?
Right.
But we wouldn't expect our doctors to only get their doctorates from a Christian university. We wouldn't expect, so we shouldn't expect our movie directors to get their degrees from a Christian film school.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And that's Brad Brobeck's podcast, kind of. Metanoia is about, hey, Christopher Nolan is this amazing writer and director, and he has these amazing principles in his movie, and they're so entertaining, and they're actually done well, and these are really, really good principled movies, and I'm going to talk about that. Mm-hmm. And that's what the podcast Metanoia is based on. And Christian films suck most of the time. Like, Fireproof is a good movie, but it's only a good movie for Christians, really. Like, we're preaching to the choir, Facing the Giants, we're preaching to the choir. The movie I was in, Milltown Pride, we're preaching to the choir, man. And
if that, I don't know who you're preaching to.
Yeah, we're preaching to a very small choir, It's we're preaching to the quartet with that movie. I didn't mean to put that on the level with with Facing the Giants. That's not what I was trying to do. But just Christian filmmaking in general, man. Like, yeah, it has
gotten better, and there are some gems here and there.
You said this. You said you don't cuss, and I said I do cuss. I kind of want to see a Christian film that has bloody violence and cuss words. Here's what I mean. All right, so Brad and I were talking about this the other day. I want to see a film of David's Mighty Men. That in my mind, that film looks like 300, the movie about the Spartans. 300. I mean, those guys were warriors. They killed people. They fought off entire armies or entire legions of men on their own. They did these amazing things, and that stuff is not pretty. That stuff is violent as I almost said. That stuff is violent AF. That stuff is violent AF, Timmy. Violent AF. And I'm sure they said a Yiddish cuss word at some point in there. I mean, even before I cussed, like when I was a senior in high school, I just gotten saved like a year earlier. I only listened to Christian music. I didn't cuss, you know, I didn't have sex with girls. Like I was a very like moral person, right? And I'm not having sex with girls now, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. Dadgummit.
Or guys for them.
Or guys. Hey, or guys. I'm not having sex with anybody. Okay.
Love that you had to specify. Or with girls.
Yeah. I was gonna say take this out of the podcast, but don't leave it in the podcast. But as non-cussing as I was, let's keep it on that. As non-cussing as I was in high school, on the football field, when I got hit, I mean, or something happened, just it would come out. It wasn't even a part of my language. It wasn't like I had it in there and then I said it. It's just like when you're in violence and you're getting hit and the emotions are high and the things are high, like a cuss word comes out. And I actually think that's an appropriate time. So all that to be said, I would love to see David's Mighty Men made. And it's, you know, I want to see it like 300. I don't think 300 had any cussing in it, but it had a lot of violence. And I think that's what David's Mighty Men looked like. I think they looked like the Spartans in the movie 300. So I feel like that is a Christian, like a good Christian movie. It doesn't have to be facing the giants, you know? Yeah.
Well, and to the Passion's credit, Passion of the Christ,
exactly.
They did show the violence. And
exactly.
I was glad, you know, we've talked about this before, but Christ's death was even more violent than what the movie showed.
They didn't even come close, and everybody was pissed, right? Everybody was pissed. This is too violent. My kids can't watch this. Dude, they did not come close to Golgotha on that.
Yeah.
And it's not even about the violence. The ripping, the separation of Jesus from God the Father was, you can't see that violence, but that was more violent than any physical thing he suffered. That rip, I mean, being together from eternity past, and then God, oh my God, why have you forsaken me? And having the Trinity just like, talk about violence, dude. Holy shit. I got my cuss word in.
There it is, the token cuss word of the week. So, well, cool. Yeah. Anything else
you want to talk about cussing more? I want to talk about cussing more.
That's not a recommendation for this week, just to be clear.
My recommendation is that you study up on what you believe about cussing.
Anything you want to add before we wrap this episode up?
Nah, man, let's just introduce the song and get out of here.
Cool.
And for the song this week, Josh Woodward was kind enough to give us his music royalty free. So enjoy this song by Josh Woodward called Here Lies.
Of all the fiery crashes of everyone to ever rush to love, past the stop signs and speed bumps, careening toward the tree trunks, perched above the edges of the bluff. The splendor in the tender skin, the long forgotten earthly hymn, the silent theft, the violent breath of life. To just replay the camera lens, to bring it all alive again, to climb inside that speeding car and drive. Here lie the cinders of once ignited tinder, left to burn until it turned to dust. In the wake of the embers, the aching of December, the chill that turned a healthy heart to stone. The fast ascent, the desperate thrusts, the sway steady stench of teenage lust, the hushed embrace of gushing shapes at night. To just replay the camera lens, to bring it all alive again, to climb inside that speeding car and drive. Here lies the body, motionless beside me, a little rough, but close enough to her. The splendor in the tender skin, the long forgotten earthly hymn, the silent theft, the violent breath of life. To just replay the camera lens, to bring it all alive again, to climb inside that speeding car and drive.